Today I want to show you guys how to convert a Drupal site into a static website and then host that website for free on GitHub Pages. A while back I created a site in Drupal 7 located at jimafisk.com. The site is pretty static, meaning I don't actually make changes to it very often. And there aren't any components that users interact with like web forms. If we inspect the element using Firefox's developer tools, you can go to the Network tab and then reload the page in order to see the assets that are being served. These assets come from an IP address that originate from an account I have with Amazon Web Services. That is where I'm actually hosting the Drupal 7 website. Both the website and this EC2 instance have an IP address of 52.7.127.117. I don't want to have to apply security patches to the site anymore, and I also want to take advantage of free hosting offered by GitHub. So I'm going to get rid of the database and convert this into completely static files using a tool called HTTrack. In order to do this, I'll first update my apt-get package manager on Ubuntu. This will allow me to get the most recent software versions. And then I'll download the HTTrack software using apt-get. If you're using a Mac, you may need to use something like Homebrew. Once the HTTrack software is installed, I'll change directories into my project folder. This is a location I set up previously that stores code related to my software projects. Here I'll create a directory called HTTrack. You can name this whatever you'd like. I just want it to be clear what this folder is being used for. I'll change directories to move inside the HTTrack folder we just created. And then we can actually run the HTTrack command. It will start a wizard that will guide us through the process. I'll name the project jimafisk.com since that's the name of my website, but the project name does not need to be a URL. The base path is the location on your file system where the static files will actually be saved to. In my case, I'll be in the home directory. My user for this computer is jimafisk, and then I'm in my projects folder, and then finally the HTTrack folder that we just created. The URL is the web address for the application. In my case, the domain is jimafisk.com. I'll prefix the domain with HTTP and then enter the URL. And then I'll enter 1 to indicate that I want to mirror the site. The following options about proxies, wildcards, and additional options can be left blank. Then input Y in order to indicate you want to start the mirror. I've sped up this process for this demo. Don't be surprised if yours takes a little longer than this. Once the mirror is complete, if you list the files in your directory, you should see a new folder with your project name. If you enter that folder and list the files, you may see something similar to this. I'll list the same files in a slightly different way so they're easier to read. Mainly I'm interested in the subfolder that contains index.html. It also contains a bunch of other assets like images and CSS files. If you enter this directory and list the files, you might notice that some of the original Drupal 7 structure is there. There's still a sites folder that contains modules and themes. To make things simple, we're just going to track this whole directory with git. First, we have to initialize the repository. You can do this by running the command git init. If you don't have git already installed on your computer, you have to do that first. Then running the command git status will show you all the files that are not yet being tracked for this project. Let's take a second to switch over to GitHub. First, let's create a new repository. This will be our remote for Git, and it will also be our new hosting provider for the static website. I'm going to call my repository jimafisk.com so it's clear to me that this repository is related to the website. You can add an optional description as well if that helps. Then create the repository. Since we already have code we're working on locally, I'm going to copy the commands to push an existing repository from the command line. I'll paste that into my terminal inside my Git project and press enter. This sets up GitHub as a remote or a location to push our code to. If we run the command git remote -v, it will list all the remote locations we have for this Git project. In our case, we should only have one called origin, and it's the GitHub reference we just created. Now let's create and check out a new branch called GitHub Pages. This name is very specific because it's the way that GitHub knows we are trying to host a static website with them. And then we can add all our project files to the Git index. You can run a status check to see if everything has been added to the index appropriately. If all your files are highlighted in green, you can run git commit and pass an M flag in order to set a message. Feel free to double check that you're on the right branch by running git branch -v. you should be on the gh-pages branch, and you should see your initial commit there. Now you can push your changes upstream to origin, which is the remote for GitHub, and you can pass the gh-pages branch. Then enter the username and password for your GitHub account. I'm going to turn off screen key for a second to keep my password hidden. Okay, now that the code has been pushed, we can go back to github.com and refresh our repository page. You should now see the folders and files related to our local project. It should also specify that we're on the gh-pages branch. That's actually all we need to do to get a static site up and running on GitHub. We can now visit this site by going to a specific URL that GitHub uses to serve up static sites. Mine is located at jimafisk.github.io/jimafisk.com. The format is your GitHub username .github.io/the repository name for your website. Look your site over real quick just to make sure everything's running correctly. In my case, it seems to be fine. If I inspect the element and once again go to the Network tab and refresh the page, I'll notice that the assets are now being served from a new IP address. And maybe that's pretty obvious since we went to a GitHub URL. Maybe you want to use a custom URL like jimafisk.com instead of using the GitHub address. You can do this by creating a cname. Go back to your project directory and create a new file called cname. If you use a text editor like Vim, you can create this file just by opening it even if it doesn't exist yet. Name it cname in all caps. Once you're in the Vim editor, press I to enter into insert mode. Then enter your domain on the first line. You can get it out of insert mode by pressing escape. Then write :WQ to save and exit the file. If you check the git status, you should see that the cname file is not tracked yet. Add this file to your project index, and then commit the code. Now we can push these changes up to GitHub. Once again, I'll have to enter my username and password. Once your remote updates successfully, navigate back to your web page and reload it. This time you should see the URL redirect to the cname you specified. However, if you look at the IP that's actually serving up the website, you'll notice that it's not GitHub's IP. In my case, it's the AWS account that I'm using to host the Drupal 7 website. We can fix this by updating our DNS records. First, I need to find the IP address of GitHub Pages. I'll just do a quick Google search in order to find this information. GitHub is using the IP addresses 192.30.252.153 and 192.30.252 and 154. So I navigate to Route 53, which is my DNS service. Here I'll update the A record, which is initially pointing to my EC2 instance. Instead, I need to point it to GitHub servers. Once I save the record, I can go back to my web page. However, it often takes a little bit of time for the changes to propagate through the internet. In my case, I actually sat here refreshing for about 5 minutes, except I've sped it up in this video. Your actual wait time may be longer or shorter than this, depending on several factors such as location and values you set on your DNS, such as time to live. After spending some time refreshing, I saw some weird behavior which looked like a broken site. What was actually happening was some of the assets were starting to come from the right location. Shortly after, I was able to refresh the page again, and I had a fully functional site. To make extra sure that everything was being served from the right place, I went back to the AWS console and I shut down my EC2 instance. This way it ensures everything we're seeing is actually coming from GitHub. The site still seems to be working. Now I'll just double check to make sure the instance is fully stopped. And it looks like we're good to go. Hope that was helpful. Thanks for watching.